All right, so we've got the notice of motion, and it's been moved by Councillor Johansson and seconded by Councillor Livingstone. So I'll just open it up for debate. Yanni, would you like to?
Cool. So basically, just to say that, just to give a bit of context to this, I first want to just acknowledge that the two community boards had a joint seminar on the 13th of August, and that was actually really useful. And we saw the presentation that Warwick has given to councillors today, which I think actually quite clearly showed that there was an intention to have a policy, but that the policy was not adopted in the final district plan. So I actually think when you distill it down in its most simplest form, it's quite clear that there was an intention of the hearings panel to have a policy that enabled development provided mitigation could be put in place, and that hasn't translated into a final district plan. So I really just wanted to acknowledge that that joint briefing from the community boards was, I thought, really good, and that there needed to be an opportunity for, regardless of how we got to this point, an opportunity for councillors to put it right. We need to fix this problem, which is clearly an identified issue that is causing huge stress and huge strain on a number of people in our city. So today I'm really proposing a notice of motion to get a way forward to address this. There obviously has to be more work done around the best mechanism to do so. I just want to highlight how unique we are in Christchurch. If this had happened in any other city or district in New Zealand, there would be very easy processes that could be done in a matter of weeks to sort this out. Because of the unique and extraordinary powers that the previous government put in place regarding our district planning, we are at a huge disadvantage where we cannot make changes or deal with errors or omissions in a much more streamlined way that other people could. So we need to get some advice on the best way forward. We need to treat it with urgency. And I'll also just acknowledge that this was actually, there's a, in fact, I'll save that for wrapping up in terms of right of reply. So I've introduced the notice of motion. I know that there's other things that other councillors have wanted added to it, but in fairness to everyone, because there'll be stuff that people haven't seen, I don't think it's appropriate to do that today. I certainly welcome other opportunities for us to continue to look at how we address what's gone on. But I think today is about moving forward and getting councillors to take responsibility with a clear direction to the organisation to fix this problem.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you, Leanne. Yes, just to recap with what Yanni said, this is not a new issue. It first made its way to the South Shore Residents Association on Wednesday, May the 30th, where it was explained in great detail to a good turnout of residents. Both Councillor East and I were present. Following that outcome, both the board in combination with the Linwood Central Heathcote Board had a joint briefing on this with staff on August 13th, 3 full calendar weeks before the media on it on September the 3rd. This was taken up by the board, Coastal Burwood, by way of formal resolution to write to the two local MPs, Puto Williams and Ruth Dyson, on Monday the 20th of August, 2 full calendar weeks before September the 3rd. The minutes of the joint board meeting are on your hub. If you wish to check them, that they simply note the discussion. They don't serve to make any value judgments or ascertain who did what or didn't do what. It's simply notified as a discretion, rather as a discrepancy. There are several reasons why we have these planning rules. As you know, I've got a whole list here going back to July the 17th last year with the flood, and you can add all the different water levels, high tide, etc., going up. But at this point I just wish to acknowledge Yanni and my colleagues, and also the professionalism of our planning staff, whom I have known for 3 terms, and I back them to the hilt. So I hope we will find a way to have a good outcome from today.
Good, thank you.
debating? Or?
Yes, debating. David?
Look, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Johansson for putting this remit forward and commending him for doing so. I particularly like the item 4 of this recommendation, and it really does address the issues that befall residents in South Shore, South New Brighton and Redcliffe. The huge financial cost and psychosocial stress that these people have been put under because of the unfortunate, I'll call it the unfortunate error in the district plan that we find ourselves in now. These people have suffered acutely, and some of them, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm totally in support of what we are doing here. It's a step in the right direction, and I think even item 3 gives good logic around resolving the issues that have been raised in relation to the independent hearings panel decision on the district plan. So I believe this is a good motion going forward. I support it totally, and it will go a long way to starting the process of mending a wrong that has created such an injustice in my community of South Shore, South New Brighton and Redcliffe. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I would like to make a couple of comments myself. I'm actually very grateful to Sir John Henson, because this letter has helped me understand something that I have struggled to understand since it was really first brought to our attention, largely in July. The May meeting I wasn't aware of in South Shore, but certainly from July I've been following it with great interest. Staff have provided me with advice, and I was advised and been aware of the main road decision that might be helpful in terms of providing some clarity as to what the rule, absent the policy amendment, would actually require. And unfortunately, when that decision came out, it said that it wasn't forming a precedent, and it wasn't to be taken as providing any specific direction. And so I felt that it was, we were actually between a rock and a hard place. We didn't really know how the district plan would apply, which meant that it was hard to go ahead with confidence as an owner of property in the particular areas, because you couldn't tell what you were going to be required to do in order to mitigate against a future risk. And so the organisation were providing me with some legal advice on that, and I'd met with the community board just before this was released. I didn't have the letter, and having the letter now has enabled me to really completely understand the sequence of events. So, it's absolutely crystal clear to me that the independent hearings panel wanted to have an effective rule, and I don't believe that rule is effective without the amendment to the policy. So I believe that as a council, we need to take steps to amend the district plan, or correct the district plan, in order to ensure that the intention of the independent hearings panel is able to be reflected. So I really appreciate Councillor Johansson's wording around the fourth element of this resolution. I do think that there has been a loss of public confidence in terms of the district plan process, and so the Chief Executive is working with the Office of the Auditor General in order to provide that degree of confidence and independence that people are seeking. And And I believe that when we approach central government for a mechanism to amend our district plan, as Councillor Johansson has pointed out, it was the previous government that made the decision to prevent us from touching our district plan for 5 years after the independent hearings panel had done their job. So, you know, and if that sounds like I'm being a little bit critical, it is, because I am. And I think that was an unforeseen, we're experiencing an unforeseen consequence of such an extreme provision being imposed on this City Council, and this City Council alone. No one else has been put in this position. So we don't have an easy process for doing it. We're going to have to approach government and work with them on it. At the same time, because of the level of confidence, I'm also going to ask the Minister whether she would consider re-establishing an independent hearings panel so that the coastal hazards chapter can be completed with confidence and in a relatively quick way, as the fast-track process was intended to be. I don't regret for a minute taking that coastal hazards chapter out, because I actually think we're going to be in a better position to understand the complexities in this environment, the coastal environment, going forward as a result of the very issue that's being raised. So I'm really thankful to you, Councillor Johansson, for putting this on the agenda so that we can clarify these matters. Thank you, and I'll let you wrap up the debate.
So, in conclusion, what you have in front of you today is an opportunity for action. We've had more than enough talk on this issue. It is clear there's a problem and it's time for action, and that's what today is about. I want to acknowledge the Christchurch Coastal Residents United Group, because I know that they have put a huge amount of effort into this, and in particular Warwick, who presented this morning, because it was the simplicity and the clarity that he provided to our community boards at that joint briefing, which I was at, that really helped me understand that there was a gap. Interestingly enough, there was a district plan subcommittee memo that went around on the 28th of November 2016, and I just wanted to quote that it said, restrictions on use and development of residential land in the HFHMA. With one exception, the decision largely confirmed the proposed rules to the development in the HFHMA. In most cases, subdivision and new development is a non-complying activity. The exception is restricted discretionary activity status for new dwellings and extensions to existing dwellings in the residential zones at New Brighton, South Shore and Redcliffs. Areas where the activity status applies are identified by the residential unit overlay within the HFHMA. The panel noted that the flood risk in New Brighton, South Shore and Redcliffs is predominantly with sea level rise, and that appropriate mitigation of flood risks is possible. They found that a restricted discretionary activity status provides for a more focused assessment, and that consent may be refused if the flood hazard matters are not addressed. It was part of having an enabling clause within our district plan to ensure that people could develop if they could show that the flooding hazard or risk was mitigated, which I think is a sensible way forward. So in conclusion, please support this today. There will be a time to look at a more collaborative approach to land use and district planning with our communities, and I hope one of the lessons out of what we've been through highlights that that is a positive way forward. You will recall on a number of occasions I've been critical of the fast-track district planning process that took control away from local elected members and put it into the hands of government independently appointed people. So we need to think about the impact that that's had on our community. Last night at a public meeting in Redcliffs, a person asked the question of the audience, who here knows how the district plan was developed? Hardly anyone put up their hand. We need better communication about what is being done to us as a city by the previous government in regards to district planning, so that people understand where responsibility lies for some of the issues that people are confronted with. However, as I've said, today is about recognising that there was an error/omission. We need to move forward and fix this due to the huge impact it's having on local people within our local communities. That's why I put this forward. We need to take responsibility as elected councillors for sorting out this problem, and I urge you to support the notice of motion.
Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried unanimously. Thank you.